Hi everybody, happy Friday. Sarah and I are here to read you a special book about the beach today, and then Dean's going to join on later, and it's also a great story about a lighthouse at the beach. This is a special story and it's called Riptide, and this story is actually one of my own children's favorite books because it takes place in Nauset Beach in Cape Cod, which we have gone to many times. This book is by Frances Ward Weller, and it's illustrated by Robert Blake. And it's called Riptide. Zachary lived in Cape Cod house, which had pine woods for a comforter and shingles bleached to driftwood by the sea. It was only a salt marsh and 3 sand dunes from the great ocean beach, but a long way from the village. So Zachary wished he had a dog for company. A cuddly puppy that licked was what he wanted. His father brought him a golden ball of fur, as warm and soft as Zachary's dream. He needs a hug, Zachary's father said, and then he needs a name. They called him Riptide Windjammer. Not Scout or Pal or any of the plain old names for dogs they knew. Riptide was for a current that runs out to sea when sandbars crumble. Windjammer was for a ship that runs before the wind. They didn't know he'd live up to his name. They didn't know the sea would call to Rip, as he calls to fishermen and sailors and surfers and sunbathers. The ocean always drummed Pied Piper songs for Zach's dog, Rip. For just one summer, Riptide followed Zach's small surfboard and learned the tricky ways of currents racing around the sandbars. By September, he was off on business of his own. All day he'd run for miles along the beach and then swim back as many miles to where the path for home began. He wants to be a dolphin, Zachary's father said. See how he dives into a long, harried wave, comes up and dives again? But Zachary thought Rip wants to be the wind. He likes the wind, the way he races down the shore and rides the sea. Zach still wished Rip would lick and guard the apple stands in the fall and chase the wiffle balls in the spring. Instead, year-round, Riptide patrolled the beach even when ice pulled along the sand, and only huddled gulls were there to see him running by. And worst of all, there was summer when Rip wanted more than running free to be a picnicker, a surfer, even a lifeguard, herding toddlers in the shallows, just like the shepherd dogs with new lambs. Rip couldn't read the big clear signs and said, "No dogs on Nauset Beach." There it is. So when the beach patrol went after him with whistles and their walkie-talkies, Rip thought that surely they must be mistaken. At first, he simply paid them no attention, and then he learned a dozen new escapes. The gray-haired tower of a man who wore a badge and a nameplate, his name was Nick, had eyes that swept the beach and didn't miss a thing. "I'll chase that rascal from here to Halifax if I have to," Zach heard him tell the lifeguards. Rip wasn't very old when Zach was called one day to fetch him and found him giving a small boy a ride. The child let Rip's tail go and splashed toward deeper water. Rip spun and leapt beyond him, barking warnings. "You hear that ruckus, son?" Nick frowned at Zachary. "Your Riptide seems to think he has to guard this beach, but we've had 18 guards already. Keep him home." And so they tried. Zach's father took him to the barber shop, where conversations crackled and there were pats aplenty. But Rip looked bored and moaned beside the door. Zach and his mother popped Rip in their truck and drove to Halifax for corn and let the wind whip his ears out like flags. He's just pretending he's at the beach, thought Zachary. No sooner was the corn heaped into the seat that Rip was gone again. As the ocean is calling him. There never was a doubt the beach was where they'd find him. The phone calls kept repeating, "Come get Rip." And on the beach, Rip led his chasers first one way, then another. He swam and he ran, and he mooched and he ran, made friends and he ran. When chasers came too close, he swam to sea and down the beach for home. Just like the wind, he never could be caught. As summer followed summer, Nick seemed to watch Rip with a growing twinkle in his eye. and everyone began to feel that Rip belonged. Then came an August day when Zachary headed for the beach. The week's first sunshine warmed the footbridge through the marsh. Zach's bare feet thudded on the boards. Boom, boom, echoed the waves, still drumming from a storm. Somewhere far off, a gull or siren cried. Zach wondered where Rip was this shiny day, and then a flock of sirens wailed beyond the dunes, and Zach began to run. The beach was not its usual merry sprawl. Tens and knots of people hovered at the water's edge. Lifeguards charged through the surf with ropes and boards and buoys to reach the chain of swimmers drifting out to sea. It was a real riptide caused by the passing storm. And where was Rip? Zach spied him standing at the attention, gazing out to sea. Then Riptide ran down the dune and bolted for an open stretch of swells. "No, Rip!" yelled Zachary. "Come back!" Instead, Rip burst into the water, battling waters that buried him and tried to drive him back. Riptide Windjammer had a mission of his own. Beyond him, Zachary saw a single head. Rip circled, and two hands that beckoned reached to grab his tail. Zachary stood breathless at the water's edge, and Rip, towing a girl behind him, swam for shore the way he always did, with no mistake. Zach sloshed in the ankle-deep water, but Nick waded out beyond him and snatched up the girl before the waves' curls caught her. "It seems," he called to Zachary as he carried her back to shore, "your rascal Rip has saved a life." But then a waterfall of wave crashed down on Rip. He clawed for footing in the shallows, but backwards dragged him out into the undertow. "Oh no," Zach yelled. "He's sliding down the Rip. Can someone get him?" It seemed Rip paddled with a purpose, but he was being carried out to sea. For as he struck the sea-bound current, he sailed out still faster, like a gull upon the wind. "Turn," Zach shouted, but Rip sailed out till Zach could barely tell his dog from sky and water. That's a great picture, but not such a great thing happening, right? Let's see what happens. "He doesn't seem scared," murmured Zach. "That's his world," Nick said, and swinging up his binoculars, he gave a cheer. "All right, he's veering, swimming down the beach," then pushed back his cap. Nick chuckled and shook his head. "Looks like he really is my 19th guard," he said. For the 1000th time, Rip swam for home. Zach strained to watch him in the dazzle of sea. Then Zach began to run. He'd meet Rip down the beach and walk him home. The beach patrol never chased Rip again. The lifeguards let him join their drills, and as he aged, they drove him home for supper. And Zachary was content with Rip when he dug canyons in the Ocean's edge, ran wind sprints with the guards, and rode out to the end of a land in Nick's old Jeep. From now, Zach knew what Rip had always known. Rip was the 19th guard, as restless and constant as the wind. His place was on the beach. There would never be another one like him. And that's the end. And that's a book called Riptide. And then we're going to have a special story with Dean. And I'm going to see Sara went off. I'm going to see if she'll come back. Sara! And she can say goodbye. And then we'll see you. We'll see you next. We'll see you in a minute with Dean. And then we'll see you next week. Come here, Sara. Come here. Come here. Come here. And here she is. Have a great time listening to Dean's story, and we're going to give him the focus now.